Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. Today, we are working with pragmatics. If you see the title of the first slide, it's Pragmatics Speaker Meaning. So, last lecture, we dealt with semantics as the conventional, or let's say the specific meaning of language, and here we are dealing with the speaker meaning. So it's like we are dealing, and we talked about the difference between semantics and pragmatics lately. um, we are dealing with what the speaker intend an utterance to mean, and we will be dealing with examples, exemplifying this concept. So when we talk about pragmatics, we are talking about what people say, not only what people say. We focus on not what people say, but how they say it and how others interpret that utterance in social context. So here we've got all kind of it. With the pragmatics, it involves all social keys that accompany language, and these keys help listeners to interpret an utterance because as I said before, context is an essential factor in pragmatics, and we say an utterance means different, has different meaning in different contexts. So we've got all these social keys that, in context, that help you interpret an utterance. So when we do pragmatic analysis, we are taking theoretical methodological approach to language that focuses more on context and the actual linguistic behavior than on kind of some abstract idealized systems. So in pragmatics, the study of pragmatics allows us to understand communications by trying to work out not only the literal meaning of words and sentences, but also the hidden, the indirect, or the inferred meaning of utterances, across whole social text. So it helps us understand how people say what they mean without meaning what they say. So here we said that basically this is something attributed to context, and we'll be dealing now with the with an essential example. If you look at this slide, you can read it at home while you watch this tutorial, but I'll give you a summary. Two tourists visited Scotland, and they saw a cathedral, a ruined cathedral. So when they asked what caused that, why they asked a small boy why it is so badly damaged, and he said it was the war. So they are in the 1960s, and it happens that in that during that time there was a war. So they thought that the war the boy means is the one in the 1960s. But when they looked at the church and the cathedral, they found that the damage is not a new one. So it must have been, the cathedral must be in that state for much longer than the 60s. So he said, "What? Why?" They asked the boy, "Why you mean?" And he said, the war with the English." So his reply made them infer that the war he means is traced back to 1745. What helped them interpret the utterance? What helped them interpret the utterance? The physical context. When they looked at the cathedral and they saw the damage, and from the damage they could, they pondered the implication that this, and they suggested that okay, this is not the 60s, this is much older. So when they asked him what war he means, so he meant the war with the English again, is not the answer is not specifying the exact time, but they discovered, they ended up they ended up with the inference that the war in 1745. What happened here is that they used the physical context, and they tried to understand and infer the meaning of the invisible meaning of the utterance, because when the boy said the war with the English, he didn't give the time. So there is something invisible, and they inferred it. So we said that pragmatics, we study, we help, we focus on how people say what they mean without saying it. So here, what is not said or written, how can we study what is not said and written? We've got context, as I said earlier, and the context involves background knowledge, and these two things provide insight into how more is being communicated than just said. If you look at the image here, heated attendant parking, so you would think that the parking will be in a place where it's heated, and you see you've got different interpretations. So here you think that the sign means that you take an attendant and you hit him, and then this is where you can park him. But we don't park attendant, we park cars. So the sign here indicates a place where you can park your car, and there will be an attendant to look after. Right. So where do we get that inference from? The context again, as it's in the same way that tourists could infer what kind of what the boy means. So you might ask, what's the invisible meaning and what's the conventional meaning? And now we know that pragmatics is the study of meaning. And again, what kind of meaning? The speaker's intended meaning. So how can we differentiate between semantic and pragmatics? I'll give you an example here. Suppose that you invited a friend over for dinner, and your child sees your friend reach for some cookies and says, "Better not take those, or you will get even bigger." So you will get even bigger. And you look at your child and you can't believe he's so rude. So with semantics, if we analyze this sentence and we try to interpret the sentence semantically based on the conventional meaning, the child is trying to say that eating cookies makes you, makes you gain weight. But in a social context, you think your child is telling your friend that she is fat, and this is rude. So he didn't say the word fat, and he doesn't even intend to be rude, but you see the social context impose certain meanings on the utterance itself. And that's why the context is something, in a context like this, imagine as, an event, a domestic event, like they are, having dinner, and there are cookies and stuff. So you see, everything people do here, it's like a context here. Everything people do, whether they speaking or not, occurs in a context. Now we are in a context, though it's like a virtual one. And here, context, if you see here from this example, context has a powerful effect on discourse, not only for the hearer as he interprets a message, but also for the speaker as he formulates his message. So we've got an interpreter and a speaker, and we've got the context that help people interact within, and understand utterances. So when we talk about the contextual informations, we are talking about a different image here. Look at this one. Baby sale, baby and toddler sale. Looking at the image here, it might suggest that it's a place where people sell the babies, or they are selling babies. But of course, nobody sells babies. So based on the, pondering the implication, you will conclude that it's a place where stuff for babies and toddlers are sold. are on sale. So again, the context is, highly supported, but highly supporting the interpretation of um, the message. So when we talk about context, what types of context do we have? With Ewell, the simpler one is that we've got the physical and the linguistics. With the physical here, it's the location where we encounter words and phrases. So, for example, as I said, if you remember the example at the beginning of the two tourists, they studied the physical context and they understood that the child means, the boy means something else, not the war not the 1960s war. So it's the physical context, it's the outer, destination where we encounter words and phrases. So, for example, the word bank on a wall of a building is understood as an institution, but when we have the word bank in the text, how can we understand the meaning? Because bank has two meanings, bank of a river and bank of like an institution. So if you see that the word bank occurs with saving accounts, with other words, like they can be, classified under the category of finance or money, then we mean bank as an institution. But when we talk about bank in referring to nature and river, and it's, the linguistic context here help us infer what kind of bank is meant. So here the linguistic context, it or the context, it means the words used in the same phrases or sentences. So if the word bank occurs with steep and overgrown, then we have no problem deciding which type of bank is meant. But by the way, there are other types of context. So, like for example, we've got the cognitive, the emotional. For the time being, you are responsible for only these. But I prefer that you learn other ones because these will be very, important for your progress. Why context is significant? Look at these two examples. John is looking for his glasses. Try to deal with these sentences in the same way that we interpreted the meaning of the word bank. If we look at this sentence, he's looking for his glasses. It's kind of vague. Why? Because the word glasses has two meanings. It could be spectacles or it could be vessels, drinking vessels. So it's kind of ambiguous which word is meant, because there is no enough context. But when this sentence is replaced in a whole text, you will understand from the surrounding words and sentences, you will understand what glasses is meant. So when we say they are cooking apples, we might be, for example, this sentence is ambiguous because it might be an answer to a question, where are they? And you answer, they are cooking apples. So they are in the kitchen. Or you might mean to describe what type of apples are they. That's the apples that are used for cooking. So here, these sentences are ambiguous without context. So the context is, as I said, is essential in pragmatics, and because without, and by the way, there is something very important. If you notice these sentences, you find the word here, he's looking for his glasses. If we put them in for example, in a kitchen, if we put in a sentence in a text where he is in the kitchen in a context, and we will understand that he's looking for the vessels. But, well, for example, if he is in his office, the word the glasses would mean the spectacles. So we find the context here, it plays or affects, the meaning of the sentence, the meaning of the word. So we will not, for example, infer that he's looking for his glasses, spectacles in the kitchen. Of course, he's looking for the vessel. So we see the words can have different meaning in different contexts. So they are not, the same, always the same. I'd like you to look for other types of contexts. You try to provide explanation for them. So, like, for example, try to go and search for social context, sociocultural context, social and emotional, or maybe physical, psychological context. These are very important and might help you analyze. So, it might help you in analyzing certain utterances. So you will need these, and please have a look and search for them. Another example where context is essential and where the difference between physical and linguistic context is significant is when we look at, for example, a sign when you enter a city. Let's say, suppose that you are traveling to a city, let's say it's Las Vegas, and then you will find the sign here, this one, and it says, "Welcome to Las Vegas." You understand that they are welcoming you. But if you look at the text, I didn't know there was so much crime and vice in this city. And somebody says, "Welcome to fabulous Las Vegas." So this is kind of ironic because that's Las Vegas, where level of crime is high. So these illustrations are kind of context-dependent illustrations. So you need to learn the different types of context, so you will be able to analyze utterances like these. So again, what's pragmatics? And what are the central topics of an inquiry? So we said it's the speaker's use of language. It's the meaning of the speaker's use of a language. So we are looking at implicature, presupposition, speech adjectives, and references, and maybe politeness as well. So here, when we study the speaker's intended meaning, we are looking at some kind of shared assumptions. So when we say it's the study of the invisible meaning, then we try to understand or we recognize what is meant even when it is not actually said or written. And in order to be able to do this, we need to, of course, to draw upon shared assumptions and expectations when people try to communicate. So when we investigate those assumptions and those explanations, we get insight into how more is always being communicated than said, as when we describe this, or we analyze the signs like heated attendant parking or baby sale. So these implications are things that you learn by learning different types of contexts. Try to have a look at these. Now, we said the first topic we deal with is deixis, but look at this sentence here in blue or violet. Yes, you will have to bring it back tomorrow because she's not here today. Any idea what this sentence means? It kind of meaningless because these are general words. For example, you, it, but what it? You will ask, what is meant by it? Is it a flower, a gift? Back tomorrow, but which date is today? And so I understand that tomorrow because she's not here today. Where here? In a school, in a house. So if we notice that these are general words and they might have different reference based on different time, space, place, or person. So in different contexts, these words might refer to different things. So suppose that you borrow a book from your friend and then you go home you go to her house and you try to give her back her book, and the mother says you will have to bring it back here tomorrow because she's not here today. Or maybe you send a gift and you say you will have to bring it back tomorrow. And by the way, tomorrow and today might be differently because based on different times, it might be the same sentence might be uttered on the 1st of January and maybe the 1st of October as well. So here today, they don't have a specific meaning. They depend on their meaning depend highly on context. So these are called deictic words. How can a word be deictic? When can we say that words are deicted if their semantic meaning is fixed. In a dictionary, we know what's today and what's tomorrow, but their denoted meaning varies depending on time, place, or even persons, because they are not the same in every context they are uttered. So, for example, here, utterances like these cannot be treated in isolation. They function, they are treated as part of their possible context. So with context here context is a dynamic phenomenon. It changes continually. So the same sentence, for example, is uttered when you are bringing a gift or when you are bringing a book, or so it changes continuously and always influence the linguistic product of the discourse interaction. And it can contain various kinds of information that is that helps you characterize a wide range of phenomena like the deixis or implicature. So you need to the significance of the context here is quite evident, because it changes with deixis. The meaning of deixis changes with context, and that's why context has certain elements that help you understand the meaning of the deixis or reference or implicature, and you can make inference as well. You understand, or you try to infer what the speaker intends you to infer. So we've got different types, three types of deixis, and we've got, for example, here person deixis, when you, for example, personal pronouns. By the way, deixis has the meaning of pointing to something, pointing to a person. So, for example, me, you, this girl, and this is when you're talking to close people and not close to the speaker when you say him, there, that woman. The second is spatial deixis, where these are expressions referring to place. Here, behind me, this bed, or those hills. Temporal deixis is referring to time, like today, yesterday. Okay, so if you look at these expressions, you find that they are interpreted in terms of which person or place or time the speaker has in mind. That's why context is important. And you see, it's marked, it marks whether the person you are talking to is close to the speaker or distant. And it can indicate whether, for example, the movement is away or from the speaker or towards the speaker's location, like when you say go and come. So if you are, for example, looking for someone and she appears moving towards you, say here she comes. Or if she's moving away, then you are telling there she goes. So you see, here and there involves different implication based on what's going on in that context. So here, for example, according, deixis, we find that people can be used, can use these to refer to be funny, for example. For example, free drinks tomorrow. So whenever you come, it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. Whenever you go to that cafe and asking for your free drink, and you say no, it's tomorrow. You are kind of 1 day earlier than the offer day. So another topic to deal with in pragmatic study is reference. Okay, imagine, ladies, that sometimes you know a person, or maybe a famous one, or someone like you girls among you. For example, you have a specific guy in particular, and then you try to call him a certain name, and only you know that name. Or maybe you try to use a word to refer to someone, and people will quickly infer which one you mean. So with reference, you refer to somebody, like an act by which a speaker uses language to enable listeners to identify something. So, for example, when you say Mr. Right or Mr. Perfect or Miss Pink for a lady who always wears pink, or for example Miss Black, or maybe you say, when we say Miss United States of America, so it means that this is you will have different, you will have, you are referring to certain people. For example, if there's a person who always uses an armchair, he doesn't sit on, he likes his armchair, and you say Mr. Armchair. So with armchair, you are using the word armchair to refer to the person, and that reference helps others identify that person. So you don't want to mention his name, so you say armchair. People, everyone in for example in the class will understand who is the one who always sits on armchair. So references can be proper nouns, noun phrases, and sometimes pronouns. So assumingly, we are using words to identify entities uniquely, but in fact they have a range of references. They refer to many entities in the world. So look at this note. Let's imagine that we always have, we live in the same area, and there is always a naughty guy who always like rides his motorcycle, and he has the Kowski. So we call him Mr. Kowski because we are using the word to refer to him, using the brand, the motorcycle brand, to refer to the person. But for example, here we are referring to a person. When we say that icy stuff, that thing with the seeds, or that bread with the seeds, imagine that we are sitting on a table and there are different dishes or different types of food, and then you find a bread or something like a bread or maybe a cookie with seeds on it, and you say, can you give me that seeds, that thing with the seeds? So here you are referring to something to identify it and to help listeners identify it. So using language to refer to something and enabling others to understand your implications. What happens when you say that icy stuff or that blue thing? Because let's say you don't know what's said, but you characterize it by its color, so people will infer what thing you mean. So the blue thing, the icy stuff, or Mr. Kowski. So here, people will understand, will infer from your reference, will identify what you mean. So this is called inference. This is kind of an additional information that you use to create. So the additional information used by listeners to connect between what you say and what you mean. So when you say that bread or that thing with the seeds, so people will make a connection between the type of food that has a seed and what you mean, what exactly you mean. So of course, to understand, to say that you're referring to something adequately, of course, it will be judged by the listener's ability to immediately recognize what you mean, rather than on depending on dictionary knowledge of the word you use. Because if they say that icy stuff or that blue thing, doesn't mean that for example, if you say the chair, the blue chair, or you say that blue thing, of course it has a dictionary meaning, but or even the food with the seed, it will have a dictionary meaning. But once, because you don't know it, and the way you successfully refer to it will, of course, help listeners recognize what you mean without depending on the dictionary knowledge, because it will, in that context, it will not, the dictionary meaning will not be, adequate one. Look at this. Where's the spinach salad sitting? By the door. Imagine that you are working as waitresses in a restaurant, and somebody ordered a spinach salad, and then you ask your mate and you say, where is the spinach salad sitting? Here you don't refer to the salad itself, because the salad doesn't sit, right? It's eaten. So here you mean the reference you used is the person who ordered the spinach salad. And when your friend says by the door, it means that your reference is successful, because your friend made the correct inference, and that fulfills the communication and answers your question. Look at this. Can I look at your Chomsky? You know Chomsky, the linguist, and nobody owns Chomsky because Chomsky is a person. But here you refer to the book written by Chomsky. So when you say it's there on the shelf, it means that you mean the book. Of course, Chomsky is not on the shelf because Chomsky is now at home. So when you say it's on the shelf, it means that you understood the implication of the reference of the speaker. So if X, look at this rule, if X is the name of the author of a book, then X can be used to identify a copy of the book by that writer. Think of these examples, ladies. Jennifer is wearing Calvin Klein. We saw Shakespeare in London. Of course, Shakespeare is dead. So if someone visits the UK and comes back nowadays and says, we saw Shakespeare in London, of course they don't mean Shakespeare as a person. They refer to the place where Shakespeare used to live. And when you say Jennifer is wearing Calvin Klein, of course she's not wearing Calvin Klein, but she's, using a perfume that's been, manufactured by this brand. Anyway, now we've got anaphora and cataphora. So this is another way of dealing with examples of trying to understand utterance meaning, but we will save this for the next lecture. So now please do the assignments for this section, and I wish you good luck. Please don't forget to write any question in the comment bar. Thank you very much, and goodbye.